Hey, this is Sam from Vim. So over the last year, we've always been looking at how to bring BIM projects into Power BI and link it with other data that is static. Now, today we're going to be looking at something quite special, which is how to integrate Power Apps into Power BI. And why do we care about Power Apps? They let us input data. So instead of just reading and reporting and mixing all this data together, we are now bringing our own data in there, letting users on the field or letting estimators add data that was missing from the model to help condition it and track it and update the data in real time. So today's, we're going to be looking at estimation workflows, but next time we're going to have something much simpler, which is status. So let's look at this dashboard. And before we go in, we have to realize that this dashboard, it works, it's functional, but it's definitely not a perfect dashboard. There's a bit of work left to be done on the user interface to make this a better experience for the user. But this is going to be enough for our tutorial. So right now we're looking at this curtain panels, and they're estimated by count at $500 per unit. And when we look down here, we see that we actually have area information. We don't have any length, we don't have any volume, but if we wanted to, we could switch this to area. And I believe everything's in feet right now. So we have about 8,000 square feet of this type of panel. So let's just say that per feet now it's, I don't know, $200 per square feet. We're going to save this estimation data. And for this type of panel, it's going to now calculated per area and is going to have this new cost per per square feet in this case. And we have to let this table calculate a bit longer because it's got this very complicated column here being calculated. But here we go. We see per area, there's 159 of them. Now it's $200 per area. This is the new total, and our grand total has been updated. So what's happening here? Basically, this Power App is connected to this live table. And this isn't any kind of table. It's not an Excel file. It's not a SharePoint list. It's a Power App table. So this is what Microsoft calls part of the Dataverse, and these tables here are special because they're live. So as soon as we write to them, they get updated and Power BI is able to read it immediately. So if I refresh here, we're going to see our latest input, which is the key, which is the model, category, family, type, name, and then for that key, connecting to a Revit model, we're saying, well, this is an area by type, and this is the cost per area. Ignore the units. That's just a refinement we're not going to be dealing with in this version of the tutorial. So our goal for this tutorial is to allow the user to estimate by count, by lump sum, by volume, and by length. We're going to skip the weight entirely. And if there's a lump sum, we're going to give it a unique ID, and we're going to give it a title as well so that we can analyze all of the lump sums together. For example, saying, hey, you know what? All the light fixtures are just $3 million. I don't care. I'm not going to give you the breakdown. I'm just going to give you one big lump sum for that. Now, a couple notes, this will require Fabric. The other thing that's important is that I created this tutorial entirely with the help of Gemini, Claude AI, and some ChatGPT. So the way I recommend working, you may have some different requirements, right? You may say, hey, I need to have the units in here. I want the user to select it once, or maybe you want to associate it with a cost code or something like that. So I recommend getting familiar with this workflow that I'm going to share with you. But if you do have some questions, I would recommend troubleshooting through Gemini. And the way I would do that is simply say, here is the document. So drag and drop this PDF into Gemini and say, I'm having some problem at step 2.3. Here's a screenshot. Can you help me troubleshoot the formula? And let's keep updating the document for my own needs. So it's going to give you a different version of that document that you can work through. And the first thing we'll need to do is go in makepowerapps.com and create a new table. So in the table button here, we're going to select new table, create new table. And here we're going to create the table from a blank. Okay, so if you accidentally close the items below, you can bring it back by clicking here, Show Data and Hide Data. So the first thing we're going to need to do is rename our table because that is a terrible table name. Now in here we say you should name it project name. So obviously you can call it, tutorial project or something like that. Now I already have a couple of tables that are project name 1, and now I'm going to be calling this project name 2 so that the tables don't fight each other. And this is an estimation by type, so not by instance, and save this. Now, down here, we're going to start dealing with our columns. Now, it's already given us a column as a key, meaning this column cannot be empty, it cannot be deleted, and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to rename this column right away to EstimationKey. And be very careful with your capitalization. We're writing in a way right now that's called camelCase, where every letter is capitalized and we're not really putting spaces. So instead, we're just capitalizing the letters like that. It's a standard for databases and programming. So I suggest you carefully follow that lead. All right, let's keep going down our list here. So the first one, we rename and we update. For the next columns, we're going to create them using the new column button. So estimation type. Now the next column is actually quite special. So it's estimation type color. And it's going to be a formula. So now I'm just going to save and exit and go right back in the table. And you can scroll down all the way here, but I find just pressing the custom saves me a lot of browsing. So we're going to go right back into the table and edit it. Okay, so I'm not sure why, but in the kind of initial creation phase, it wasn't letting me create a new column that was of a type formula. So I saved it, I reopened it. Now the UI is a bit different, but I can create my formula. So let's keep working. The next column we have is quite a special column. It's going to be doing some calculation through a formula inside of this table. And so for the data type, we are going to select formula. And in the formula, we're going to copy this thing entirely. And we're going to keep the format as text. So let's save this and see if it'll accept it. Perfect. Let's keep going. We're going to create some more columns. So cost per unit. And this is going to be a currency. And the next one is cost lump sum. Also a currency. And be very careful when you're writing these, because if you make a mistake, it's really a pain to delete and just recreate or rename the columns. So cost lump sum title. And this one, we are keeping it as text. Cost lump sum ID is also going to be text. And this one was kind of weirding me out. Why is it text? Shouldn't it be a number? But the way we're going to create these IDs is giving it like the exact date and time. So that makes more sense as a text. Is going to kind of limit any kind of mathematical issues with a long string of numbers. And finally, this is an improvement we could make in the future, which is cost lump sum color. The intended goal here would be to say, hey, every lump sum gets its own color, and we're going to add the data in here so that way when we make a table to analyze all the lump sums, if the $1 million light fixture package is orange in the 3D viewer, it's going to be orange in the matrix, it's going to be orange in the chart bars and everything so forth. But we would have to create a Power Automate workflow that goes through every unique lump sum ID and assigns a new color to this column. So we don't have that in the tutorial at this point. Okay, we are going to click back. And obviously our table is empty right now. And if we go back to our tables view and look at only our custom tables, you're going to notice that the actual kind of secret name of the table, well, first off, there's no capital letters, and they added this CR865. Your number is probably going to be different than mine, but they added CR865_. So this is what we refer to as the internal schema name, and so you're probably going to want to write this down. Okay, so here I have an empty template, and this came from the enterprise package of Vim. And this is going to allow me to point to a Vim project, which is going to grab my BIM and bring it into Power BI. So if you use Vim, you've done this 100 times before. In our case, we are simply, we've converted, for example, this Revit file, and this is not the right project because my project's on another computer. But what we're going to be inputting into Power BI is the database and server name. So I'm going to go into the Transform Data button and Data Source Settings. And in here, instead of pointing to empty server and empty database, I'm going to put in the model, which in this case is actually a modification of the Revit sample project, but it's been modified by BIM Guru. So if you don't know BIM Guru, he's a Revit influencer or BIM influencer. Go check out his YouTube channel. He's gracefully allowed us to use this. All right, so our project is done loading the BIM data. At this point, we are going to grab the table that we've just created, even though it's empty, to start rigging it in here so that when we start filling it in, the relationship is already established. Now, if we look at the data model, you'll notice that there's already a lot of data in here, and basically everything is connecting to the central table element. So that's really the mother table of them all. It's already being calculated, and in here we'll need to add an estimation key. And most importantly, first we'll need to bring in our Dataverse table before we can link them. So let's add this new data here. We're going to click on the Get Data button and then look for Dataverse. And we have our little green Dataverse button, so we're going to click Connect on that. Now, it's very important that you don't do Dataverse table in your own environment. That's never going to work for sharing it externally to people outside the company and so forth. So make sure you work in your company's Dataverse environment. And once again, we see the tables with the CR860. So you can just look and search for the table that you're looking for. And then we're going to hit the check mark right there and say load. Now, all the other tables, they're coming in through what we call import. So there's a real live database somewhere, and we bring in that data, and then we're like, okay, well, I'll refresh you when I feel like it, you know, when I hit the refresh button in here or so forth, or on a schedule. In here, it's very important to load this table in direct query mode. That means it's reading it all of the time. It's a special table, and you know, you can't really do transformations on those data, which is why we're calculating the color code in there. And so it's live data. So you make sure that you bring in that table as direct query. And really what that's going to do is now it's going to be mixing import data and live query data. So we're going to see a little markdown here that's going to say it's in mixed data mode. And what we're also going to see is our table. See it usually pops on the far right or far top right. So notice how it's blue. So this is a live table. Okay, so when you copy paste reports between Power BI things, it's going to look for things that have the same name. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this a nice name. Get rid of the CR865, etc. We're going to give it a very standard name that fits our standards of naming everything in here. So we're using a camelCase with the capital letters, estimation by type. And so if you have a couple projects where you're working on this and you want to copy some data from one to another, if it's got the same table and row name, you should be able to do that no problem. And notice now it's just going to go in here. We're going to have another estimation table later. So all the estimation stuff is going to group together. We need, a brotherly data where it's both the same and it's going to connect between those two. So we're going to need to create an estimation key that looks exactly like the one that we've created for our previous project. And this is the formula we're going to be using. So to create an estimation key, you're going to go in your Transform Data button. And, in the Power BI world, that's known as Power Query, even though it doesn't say Power Query anywhere. So we're going to open Power Query and go to our element table. Wait till it loads. It's a pretty big table. Everything in your project is in this table. It's going to be the biggest table after the instance parameter table. So give it a second to load, and we can already prepare here by going to add column, and we're going to do custom column as soon as this wakes up. Okay, so we've got our table of element loaded. Let's click custom column and copy paste this code down here. And we are going to call this estimation key. Click OK. Once again, it's calculating, so we see the little dots here poking around. And when this table arrives, it's going to be on the far right. So we've pre-scrolled down here, and we're just waiting for it to be birthed. And we're waiting for it to be born. All right, so we don't see any error messages. What we are seeing in here makes sense. So we're going to click the Home, Close, and Apply button, and this is going to cement it into a new real column that we can use. So just give it some time. It's refreshing all of the tables, mostly the element table for this new connection. Okay, so the calculation is done. Let's find our estimation key. We've got one right here and one right here. So we're going to marry these tables, estimation key, drag and drop. We're going to wait a second for this to load. Make sure this is set to both directions and click save. That's great. Now, here's a little thing, right? We created like 7 columns in this table. And the Dataverse table decided, that's great, Sam, but I want like 30 columns in this table. So what's going on here, right? Why is there 22 more columns in here and so forth? So there's versions, there's owning team, there's who did it. Now, some data is actually quite useful. When was it modified? And really what's happening is there's versioning happening because it's a fancy Dataverse table. So if I come in and I say the tree is $50 and Johnny comes in tomorrow and he says it's $5 million, there's going to be a history of that. So that's going to give you some accountability. We're not just overwriting numbers and throwing it in the garbage. We're keeping track of who is changing what and so forth. There's a lot of more stuff happening in here. Now, that's all great and fantastic, but the last thing I want to do when I'm dealing with my report is dealing with any of this, really. So what we're going to do is hide a bunch of these columns. And to do that, we're going to use, we're going to open the table in here, estimation by type. We're going to hold Shift and then select everything, right click and say hide in report view. So when I go in here in my report view, I'm not going to see these things. Now everything is hidden. I need to unhide a couple of things. So I'm going to hold Control and select. And for all of these, so things that start with estimation or cost, I'm going to unhide them. And I'm not sure why it creates a column for every number that's called base. You never need the base. I'm not even sure what it is, but what you need to know is that you don't need it. Okay, so I've selected the things I want to unhide. I'm right-clicking, and I'm going to unclick the hide in report view. All right, that's fantastic. So we've hidden a bunch of columns, and you can see them all hidden in here. And when we go open the table here, let's look at estimation by type. Isn't that much nicer? Isn't that just beautiful? And if we really want to, we can view the hidden things. That's just kind of giving me a headache thinking about it. So we're not gonna look at the hidden things in here. We're gonna keep things under the ground. Okay, so for our initial test, we need to bring in some of this estimation data in here so we can see if anything's happening. So what we're going to do is duplicate the Explorer. The Explorer view is just a very typical view of everything, right? It's looking at things per model. It's looking at all of these things. Actually, we're going to hide the groups and the topography. We're going to hide this, actually. We're going to remove stuff that is not physical. So in here for this page, we're going to say, don't look at things that are group, don't look at rooms, just look at physical elements. And that's coming from our category tag. So now we are no longer looking at things that are not physical. So we don't really need to show the category tag in here. So now we're showing the BIM document file name, the category, the family, family type, and Revit ID. Actually, we don't really need to see the Revit ID. So we can keep going through this matrix and seeing all of this data. Okay, and I was just saying we need to show something in here. So let's expose the estimation type as a column of this matrix that I have selected here. So that means if I successfully add new data to this empty table that's associated with an element in here. For example, if I say all the ceilings are now $500 per count, well, it's going to say 160 in a new column that's going to be called count. So that's just preparing us for later when we start testing things for real. And we're going to make some space as well. We're going to get rid of all these parameters, and we're going to be putting in a Power App in here. So the Power App button is right here in purple, Power Apps or Power BI. Make sure not to select Power Automate, but Power Apps. And we're going to place it in our new little spot that we just created. Now we need to start giving this Power App something, some data from our model that is going to be able to use. So what we're going to be doing is dragging the estimation key into its data field. That's pretty much the only thing we wanted to know about our model. So let's drag that in here. By default, it's set to don't summarize, so that's good. I don't think we have to change anything at this point. Now that it has data, our Power App kind of is starting to give us options. So it says you want to choose an existing app or create a new one. And what we're going to be doing is creating a new one. And is going to be opening it up in the browser. Now, right away, you're going to see this thing where Power BI Desktop doesn't really talk well to Power Apps and vice versa. So what we'll need to do to really have a good connection at some point is to publish our Power BI onto the web, and then we'll talk between the two web version of Power BI and Power Apps, and we'll see that in a second. But let's start dealing with this Power App. So first thing we're going to do is save this and give it a proper name. In my case, I'm going to call it project name 2 because I already have project name, and project name 1, estimation by type. Click save and publish this. So I'm going to click publish this version. And within about 20 to 30 seconds, I should technically be able to see this in here. So here it is. We have it in Power BI Desktop. Now, the connection between Power BI Desktop and Power Apps is actually quite weak. Sometimes it just doesn't get the latest. Sometimes it just doesn't really want to open it in the browser. So what we're going to do is we're going to publish our Power BI report, and we're really going to be working between 3 places. We do the data modeling and the final design in Power BI Desktop. We have the Power BI online to really test the data between the Power App and Power BI online. And we have the Power App, that's also online, that's going to be interacting with both of them. So we're kind of splitting our attention in these 3 locations. I know it's a little bit weird, but hopefully it's going to make more sense as we keep playing with this. So let's take this Power BI Desktop and publish it onto the web. And for me, I'm going to put it in sales samples. It's a workspace that has all the proper authorizations, and it's where I always work. Okay, so we have it published online. And if we want to play around with this, we're just going to click the edit button. And sometimes you're going to open the Power App and it won't really be like connected with your data. Like this just may be empty, for example. So if you want to really connect it with your data, what you can do is go on the online version of the Power BI report, click the 3 dots here and click edit. I'm just going to go back already. And it's going to open another tab for the Power App. So it's not only going to open another tab for the Power App, but that data is going to be connected. So if you're missing that connection, that's how you need to open it perfectly to see all of your connected data in here. Okay, so we just looked at this part of the tutorial here. And we're going to start building, or I should say maybe tearing this down. So first thing we're going to need to do is get rid of this gallery. Then we're going to connect to our table. So we're going to click the 9 little dots here, little grid to add data. Let's click the refresh on the tables. See all the tables, and here we go. Right away, we see project name to estimation by type. So that's what we're looking for. Now, earlier I said you're better to have all your columns there already instead of making changes in the future. If you make changes in the future, you'll need to remove this, re-add it, and then your new columns will appear. So try to get all your columns set up. Another little thing we're going to do is go into the settings here. And in display, we're going to make sure that scale to fit is on. And we're going to turn off lock aspect ratio. Okay, back to our tree view here. We're going to start adding components to our app. We're going to go here, insert, and we're going to look for a blank vertical gallery. And we're going to close this data thing, and where it says items at the top, we're going to enter Power BI integration data. And when we select the inside of this gallery, we're going to see there's kind of these smaller components in here. So these are the individual items. And I'm going to click in here and then add a text label. And it already says this item dot estimation key in here. Now, what I'm going to do is probably change the font size to make it a bit smaller. And notice how this gallery is kind of showing me whatever I put in here. So if I change one of them, they're all going to change to follow suit. So I'm going to place this near the bottom. Let's give this a little save. Next, I'm going to insert a form. So edit form. And for the data, we are going to be connecting to our table. Now, when we expand this form, we see it's got a bit too many things. So we're going to delete everything that is not in here. So we don't need the lump sum color or the ID or the estimation card or the status. So we have the 4 fields that we care about. And if we go down here on the right, we're going to be able to change the fields to follow this exact order. So cost per unit is second, lump sum is third, and lump sum title is the last one. So we have our proper order in here. Okay, so selecting the form, what we're going to do is change its item data. And for item data, we're going to copy this formula. And I need to rename this so that it looks at project name 2. Now the red stuff is gone, so we're good. Okay, so we're going to make this form a bit fancier. Okay, so now we're going to click the estimation type card data 2. And if your properties are closed, you'll need to click on it here. We're going to go into advanced and unlock for changing the properties of this element. And then we're going to select the actual data card, and we're going to delete that. Make a bit more space again. And using the insert button, we're going to have a dropdown in here. It's already named dropdown 1, so I don't need to rename it. And when I have the dropdown selected for items, I'm going to copy paste these values here. So now we have a dropdown with count, lump sum, volume, area, and length. And back on our estimation type data card, in our advanced properties here where it says update, we're going to select that and set it to dropdown 1 selected value. Our error message is giving us a bit of an error, so we're just going to delete it. Okay, let's save this whole thing. Now, based on the estimation that's chosen here, we are going to hide or not hide some things. So selecting the cost per unit data card 1, we're going to go into the visibility, and we're going to copy this formula here. For the cost lump sum, we're going to go edit the visibility here. And for the cost lump sum title, we're going to go and edit the visibility here. Okay, so that means if you are just estimating per count, well, you don't need to see anything about that lump sum. Everything else is hidden appropriately. All right, let's save this. Now we're going to add a button and place it right between these two. For the text, we're going to put in something a bit more descriptive. And notice how it wants the quotation marks around it to see it as text. Okay, now for the buttons on select, we're going to copy this giant formula. And let's look at here real quick, because I'm sure we're going to have a couple of errors. So for me, it's project name 2, project name 2, project name 2. And we just need to make sure that these make sense, right? So if it's cost per unit, we're going to want to get the data card of the cost per unit. So that's data card value 3 for cost per unit. So let's change that in here. If it's cost lump sum is data card value 2. And if it's cost lump sum title, that's going to be data card value 4. Okay, that seems to be working. So far, all of the red errors are gone. Okay, we're going to add a button for later that is called condition model. And really, this could go into another app altogether because you generally need to do it like once at the beginning, and that's it. In the text, I'm going to call this condition and change the font size to make it a bit smaller. We can even change the blue to a lighter blue so that people don't think it's as important as it is. And we're going to add just one text label here and change the text property to this formula. I'm not sure if this is actually still valid. So we're going to save and publish this app. All right, we've saved and published the app. Now let's go play with it. We've been doing a lot of learning. Let's go see some results of all of our efforts. So as I mentioned earlier, you don't really want to try to do this inside of Power BI desktop. I find generally it has a hard time. Like, see here, it's still getting the old version of the Power App when I changed reports. So it has a hard time refreshing. It's a bit bad. Okay, now I finally got it. But it's a bit bad for kind of getting that connection to the cloud data. Whereas if we go in Power BI cloud version, we're just going to change the tab here, and it should refresh and see how it's got the new layout right away. You'd have to wait a random amount of time, usually within 20 seconds or 30 seconds is going to get the data. So let's do a couple of things. We're going to say these doors cost 500 each and update the data. We get a notification that it works. And see here, we got number 2 in count. That means the data is working. Now let's go try it out per lump sum. And we're going to say it's 1,200. And now it should say 2 doors, actually, in this case, that are this way. So it's alive, baby. Let's go. Let's keep improving this. We are on the right track. Now, here's the problem. Let's go look at our table. And our table has 2 things. Well, it's actually got one thing. It's saying, hey, whenever there's this type of door, it's a lump sum, and the cost of the lump sum is 1,200. So that's great, but where is everything else in our model? If we look at our element list, we've got a lot of stuff in here. We have 14,000 rows. Now, not all of those things are physical. Some of them are like materials and things like that. But what we want to do is we want to eliminate the concept of a foreign key. So we want everything to know. We want the list here to have everything in there. With no estimation type, we just wanted to have the list of everything that's in our Revit model. So that's what we're going to call conditioning. And the reason why we want the list of everything is so you don't want like a foreign key to have one list that's like, hey, I know I'm a table, and the other list is like, I don't know who you are. I have no connection to you. and I'm not talking to you. We want to say, I'm a table. Oh, yeah, I know you're a table, but I don't have any estimation for you yet. So for that table to tell you that it knows the other table exists and that it doesn't have any information yet, we need to fill this table here, this live table, with a representation of everything in the Revit model. And as you can imagine, that's a bit of a complicated thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a conditioning flow that is going to connect our database, figure out, hey, is the thing already in this list? If not, added to this list. And then both of our tables that we have in Power BI, both of these will basically have a one-to-one relationship with nothing missing. So that's what we're looking for here. Okay. Now, in my experimentation, I found there's a setting that you're better off turning off. And where is it? It's right here in settings. We're going to go updates, retired, and disable enhanced Microsoft server connection. And there we go. We want to turn that on to actually disable the thing. So you may not have to do that. I just found that's what unblocked me. All right, now let's actually go make a connection that will authorize these Dataverse components to talk to each other. So we're going to go into the Make Power Apps, and we're going to go to Connection here, and we're going to click New Connection, SQL Server. We're going to set this up to SQL Server Authentication. And here we're just going to copy the data that we had in our refresh data. So really, this is where we're going, transform data, data source setting. And we're going to copy this as our server name. Get rid of the TCP, get rid of the 1433. We just want the server name like that. That's our database settings. And as I mentioned earlier, all of this should be in your Vim Enterprise right here. So, server name, database name, username, password, etc. Okay, so once we've entered it, we're going to create that connection. And now it's one of the connections that's available to us. All right, so we're back in our Power App environment, and we're going to click the three buttons here and start a Power Automate workflow. So we're going to click Create New Flow, Create from Blank. And we already have here this Power Apps automation. So we are first off going to rename this project name 2 in my case. And let's create the next step. We're going to type SQL Server. And here we have execute a SQL query version 2. And instead of clicking in here, what we're going to do is click those three little dots and pick the connection that we just created. And actually notice how they kind of all have the same name. So the one I created 1 minute ago, I'm going to call it project 3. And once I re-enter my username and password, it will let me save it. And here I'll probably need to redo this again. So create new flow from blank, new step, SQL. And here we go, project 3 is in our list. So now when we click here, everything is filled perfectly to go to project 3, BIM Guru Hospital, that's the name of our server, and so forth. Now in the query box, we're going to be pasting this crazy equation. And that's basically going to get just this data. And not only that, it's only going to get it for things that are physical. So it's not going to create it for things that are non-physical. Okay, we're going to save that here. And we needed to wait till we have at least one step to save it. So I just don't want it to crash right now. I'm going to go right back in there and keep editing it through here. So next step, we're going to do apply to each. So that's a control. So for this, what we're going to need to do is actually go into the expression here, paste our output, and then click OK. So it's going to apply what we just pasted as an expression down here. And this is going to be happening a lot of times. So we're going to click the three dots and go into settings, and we're going to turn on concurrency control. You can put this up all the way to 50. It may use a lot of your resources. You can likely just leave it at 25 or something like that and click done. All right, now we're ready to add an action. We're going to list the rows, and we are not listing Excel rows. We are listing Dataverse rows. Okay, so we're picking our tables. I just wrote project, so I didn't have to scroll through all of that. All right, in filter rows, we are going to copy this. And let's just do a sanity check. when we look at the estimation key in our table, we're just going to go edit this column. And when we look at the advanced options, we see the logical name. So it is the same as what we have here, CR865 estimation key. So if anything's kind of weird here, that may be what's up. And so you want to double check it right there. Okay, now let's add some actions. So we're going to click Add Action and add a condition control. And once again, we are going to add an expression in here. So I'm just going to type in the expression and click OK. And then we're going to say is equal to 0. So that's basically going to check, is the row we're looking for, is it already present? So if yes, that means it's not there. So we are going to add a new row. So let's click here, add a new row to our Dataverse. Project 2 is our table. And once again, we're going to add an expression in here, which we are just copy pasting from the tutorial. All right, so the no, we are going to leave as is because we don't want anything to happen if it's no. And we are now going to save this, and it's saved, so we're going to close it. Okay, so for some reason it didn't like our name earlier, so I just came in here to rename it. Okay, and let's select our condition button. And we are going to copy paste this code in here for on select. All we need to do is run our Power Automate workflow. Okay, so now we are going to test it. And here's what I like to do. When I have a new version where nothing kind of changed visually, I'm going to move the button up there and I'm going to say save and publish. So when I go back in Power BI and I switch between tabs, unless that little button is a bit higher, I know it doesn't have the latest version. So let me do this for a little bit. Probably in about 20 seconds is going to have the latest data when I switch. And there you go. You saw the button was a bit higher. It's now asking us to connect to the data. So it's asking us permission because it's going to be reading from our database and so forth. So we're going to allow it to do that. And we have the little button, condition button, that's higher. So we know this is the latest. So we have 2 confirmations that this is the latest Power App in our Power BI report. So let's press this button, and it should take a little bit of a time, and it's going to launch the flow. So really, when we are in our table here, if we start refreshing, there you go. We already have a lot of data that's being refreshed. And so it's going to fill up this table quite quickly. It's doing it very fast. And if we were to have an error here, what we could do is we can actually kind of monitor these flows. So here we have a flow, and it's called project name condition model. Oh, and actually it failed. It got an error in here. So it got an error because people are pretty terrible with the naming. So they used an apostrophe in the family name, which kind of threw it for a loop. And we can kind of see everything that's happening in here. This is the data that it was given. This is the data that came out. And, here we see which ones failed. So not all of them will fail, but some of them do. And now, frankly, it probably worked for 99% of the elements, right? So unless it's got a pretty bad name like apostrophes and so forth, it's not a true failure. We can probably keep working with this, but let's just make our workflow perfect, and we'll make sure to capture any kind of name with an apostrophe. So I'm just going to go back into my actions here, and when it comes to the list rows, I'm going to put this instead. So there you go. It went through the entire list in 2 minutes and 14 seconds. And when we refresh the list, we see that there was only 2 outliers. So, another good reason to not have apostrophes and weird characters in your family names and family type names and so forth. Okay, so we've confirmed that our table is actually getting updated and that we have data for every single thing that is in our model, even though some of the costing hasn't been set up yet. Now, at this point, we're going to need to promote some parameters. In upcoming versions of the Power BI template, this may actually be done for you for both length, area, and volume. But at the moment, it's something that still needs to be done manually. And promoting a parameter is just something you'll have to do quite often in Power BI. And you'll probably understand why in a couple minutes after we do it. So let's go into Power Query, into transform data, and we'll find here our family instance parameter, and we will reference it, and we will rename it estimation parameter with no S at the end. Okay, first thing we're going to do is hold control. So I'm going to click here on element, and I'm going to hold control whenever I select the other one. So element, descriptor name, and the last one we want is one of those three. So we have these columns called parameter text and quantity imperial feet, parameter text and quantity metric millimeters, or parameter text and quantity metric meters. So we're going to select the third one holding control, and then we're going to say remove other columns. And what it's going to do is delete all of the columns except for the three that we've chosen. Now for the descriptor name, we are going to click here, load more in the filters. This is going to give us a list of all of the potential parameters. And actually, first thing we're going to do is deselect everything. Then search for length, area, volume. Click OK. And this is going to make the list a lot shorter by only giving us those parameters. Now, if there's other parameters that you care about for your estimation, feel free to include them in here. The process is going to be the same. Obviously, the longer the list, the longer the data transformation is going to take in the next step. We have the descriptor name selected, and we're going to go and transform and select pivot column. Here, we're going to point to the parameter text and quantity whichever of the three you picked. And very important in the advanced options, we have to set don't aggregate. And here may take a while depending on how big your data is. We saw that this only took a couple of seconds at this point. Now this is perfect. So for every element, we have a unique row that tells us whether there's volume, length, or area. The last thing we need to do is make sure that these are all set to decimal numbers. All right, and once we've set these to decimal numbers over here, we're going to go back to home and we're going to say close and apply. Probably getting familiar, when you create a new table, you're going to want to connect it with the element table. So let's go find it. It's over here on the right. We're going to set it up a bit closer and just expand it, resize it a little bit. And what we want to do is we want to drag the element to the key. And then make sure it's a two-way relationship. And we're going to click save. Okay, so now let's just make sure that the data is actually talking to each other. So we're going to expand this table here, make a bit of space. Actually, let's copy this table down below. We'll simplify by removing the estimation type. We have the counts. Now let's go look at our estimation parameters. We can hide the element because that's useless for us here. And with this bottom matrix selected, we're going to bring in the area, length, and volume. So actually, let's go length. In here, we're going to drag length, area, volume. And there we go. We are seeing the data populate itself over here. So the curtain wall mullions have a length, and so this is the length in meters. What you may want to do is just double click on here and rename this meters, add some coloring to the background. So we're going to click on the little down arrow for length, conditional formatting, background color. In here, we're going to say if there's no values, do not format. Lowest value is a light blue, highest value is a darker blue. And let's click OK. All of a sudden, we are starting to see the data talk to us. So that's good. So we're just going to take a second, rename everything, and apply all of this stuff. And it's time we give a little bit of love to the UI because it's starting to look pretty bad. Okay, this is actually, getting pretty far along. Now, what we need to do is create this kind of mastermind measure that's going to take all of this data and give us what the heck is the estimation data from all of this. So to do this measure, we're going to select our, let's say, estimation by type, because we're just going to select that folder here and click new measures. This will make sure that the measure goes in this table. We're going to copy what we have in is the code and paste that in here. See if anything comes up red. I may need to rename a couple of things. Maybe not actually, nothing's really coming up red. So let's click OK or enter. And we have our total estimated cost measure down here. And we're going to drag that right after the counts here. Let's go look at our stuff. Ooh, looks like we got it. Okay, let's get rid of this estimation type thing. That's no longer useful. We'll bring in the cost per unit average. So not the count, but the average. That means if there's a cost per unit, when, let's say there's all the light fixtures have a cost per unit, well, it's going to give us the average, right? And then when we expand it and we look at only one light fixture, it's going to give us what turns out to be its real price. And the other thing is we're going to put in the estimation type in here. Okay, so let's do a bit of cleanup. I'm going to write this estimation type, average cost per unit, and let's bring in the lump sum cost. We're going to make a bit of space in here. And you know what? We're going to add a card up here that just gives us the total estimated cost. So it's just going to point to our measure. Now I think we're pretty much in business. Let's save this and publish it to overwrite our existing report. Yes, we want to replace it. Let's go open up the latest version. So now we're going to say these benches are $500 each, update selection. There you go. 5 times 500 is 2,500. Let's say that these are 900 each. Here we go, we have the data. Let's say that all of these are a lump sum, $50,000, furniture package 1. Now notice, it says $50,000 for all of them, but the calculation, the measure actually doesn't apply that $50,000 more than once in the total. So we're still getting an accurate number. Now here, of course, is getting rounded up way too much. So we can go change the settings of the rounding. That's just UI really. And so we have a working prototype and we can build off of this. Now, there's probably another couple hours of just UI. And let's look at that for a second. For example, our lump sum, remember we have a color for the type of estimation. So one of the things that we can say here when we are looking at the estimation type is do a conditional formatting of the background. And instead of a rule, we're going to look at a value. The value here is going to be the estimation type color from our estimation by type table. Now remember, this is being calculated live in the Dataverse table. So we should be able to click OK. And now when we look at our data, it's going to be colored based on the type of estimation it is. And speaking of estimation and colors, we could say, hey, let's have a little donut or chart here. And for this, we're going to say, count the keys of things. So count all of the things and actually count all of the things that are instances only and that are also physical. So category tag is physical. Okay. So count the things and then split them by their estimation type. And for the slices, what we'd want to do is as we start getting slices like cost or lump sum, we'll want to make sure that these codes are the exact same codes that we had in our table here. So let's go look at our table real quick. And how did we color everything in here? We had a formula, right? So if it's count, it's this number. So count is going to be this. Bloop. And if it's lump sum, is going to be this number. And that's going to give it the color in here. One thing we can do in here is also just filter anything that doesn't have data yet. So we're going to say, don't show me the blank stuff, right? So show me only the stuff that has been calculated. So now what we're seeing is very quickly the amount of stuff that's in count versus lump sum. And, instead of counting stuff, we could even do it per amount of money. So we could really keep moving with this UI, and that'll be another video. The main purpose of this video was to show you how do I get a working Power App for something in BIM without having to learn the entire Power App environment. So I hope this was helpful. We'll be continuing these series of tutorial. I'm going to be doing the same thing for status, which actually is quite simpler. Now, keep in mind, you do not want to be testing this in Power BI desktop, right? So here's where you do the UI, here's where you do your relationships, here's where you add measures. But look at what happens if I say select all updated. So see, if I press update, it's trying to refresh every single table. So that's very bad. And that's because, at the end of our flow here, whenever we do an update, we refresh Power BI. So that's a terrible behavior if you are in Power BI desktop, whereas it works as designed when you're in the online version of this. So hopefully that's clear. We'll keep talking about this subject. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.